Tonight, before you go to bed, try something. Turn off every light in your house, not just the lamp beside your bed, every single light. Put away your phone, switch off the television, close the curtains so no streetlights can sneak inside. Then wait. At first, you'll still be able to make out the room around you. But after a few minutes, something strange happens. The darkness begins to feel alive. Every tiny sound seems louder. Every shadow feels like it's moving. Your imagination starts filling in the things your eyes can't see. Now imagine that darkness doesn't last for a few minutes. Imagine it lasts 12 hours. Imagine there are no cities glowing on the horizon, no passing cars, no porch lights, no flashlight in your pocket. Nothing but the stars overhead and whatever small fire your family managed to keep burning. For nearly all of human history, this wasn't unusual. It was every single night. Thousands of generations lived in a world where sunset didn't mean the day was over. It meant an entirely different world had just begun. A world filled with sounds instead of sights, where predators hunted more confidently than humans, where a simple crack in the bushes could mean the difference between seeing another sunrise or becoming someone else's dinner. And yet, despite all those dangers, our ancestors didn't spend every night frozen with fear. They talked, they laughed, they planned, they cared for children, they watched the stars, they dreamed. In fact, some scientists believe the nighttime may have shaped humanity just as much as the daytime ever did. Because when the hunting stopped, when the gathering was finished, and when the world became too dark to travel safely, something remarkable happened. People finally had time to think. The questions children asked around those ancient fires may have become the first myths. The stories grandparents shared may have become the first history lessons. The conversations between friends may have planted the seeds of language, culture, and ideas that still exist thousands of years later. Night wasn't simply the absence of daylight. It was where human imagination came alive. But surviving until morning was never guaranteed. Beyond the warm glow of the campfire waited a world that belonged to creatures far better equipped for darkness than we were. Eyes that could see what we couldn't, ears that could hear every careless footstep, teeth that needed no invitation. So how did a species with terrible night vision, no claws, no sharp fangs, and no artificial light manage to survive hundreds of thousands of nights? How did families sleep while dangerous animals wandered only a few hundred feet away? What did they actually do during those long hours after the sun disappeared beyond the horizon? And could the way they spent their nights still be quietly influencing your brain today, even though you've probably never noticed it? To answer that, we first have to understand the single discovery that transformed the night forever. Not the invention of electricity, not the candle, not even the torch, but a flickering flame that changed what it meant to be human. But before night could become a time for stories or quiet reflection, it had to become survivable. For most animals, darkness is an advantage. Owls can spot movement from incredible distances. Wolves coordinate their hunts with almost silent communication. Big cats rely on shadows, patience, and powerful night vision. Humans have none of those advantages. Compared to many predators, our eyesight in low light is surprisingly poor. Once the sun disappeared, we lost the one sense we depended on most. Every unfamiliar sound suddenly became a question. Was it the wind, or something watching from the trees? That's why one invention changed everything: fire. Archaeologists believe humans learned to control fire hundreds of thousands of years ago, although exactly when remains a subject of debate. But once our ancestors could reliably keep a fire burning, the night stopped being completely hostile. A campfire did much more than provide warmth. It created a small island of light in an ocean of darkness. Most wild animals naturally avoid bright flames. The crackling sounds, moving shadows, and rising smoke made many predators cautious. It wasn't a magical shield, but it gave humans something priceless: time to react. Instead of sleeping alone, families gathered close together around the fire. Adults formed a circle, while children rested safely in the center. If danger approached, many eyes and ears could detect it long before a single person could. Survival became a shared responsibility. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies have noticed something fascinating. Even without assigning shifts, someone is almost always awake. One person adds another piece of wood to the fire. Another quietly watches the surrounding darkness. An elder wakes naturally and sits in silence before lying down again. The camp is rarely completely asleep. It's almost as if our ancestors developed a natural system where different people rested at different times, ensuring that someone was always alert. And then there was the sky. Without city lights, the night sky looked nothing like the one most of us see today. On a clear night, thousands upon thousands of stars stretched from one horizon to the other. The Milky Way wasn't a faint cloud hidden by pollution. It was a brilliant river of light crossing the heavens. Long before telescopes existed, people watched those stars carefully. They noticed that certain stars always returned with the seasons. Some appeared before the rains. Others marked the arrival of colder weather or the migration of animals they depended on for food. The sky became humanity's first calendar. But perhaps the greatest change wasn't happening above them. It was happening between them. When daylight ended, there were no fields to gather from and no long journeys to make. For the first time all day, people could simply sit together. Someone described a successful hunt. A child asked why the moon changed shape. An elder explained how a distant mountain got its name. Whether every story was true didn't matter. Each one carried knowledge, values, warnings, or hope. Generation after generation, these conversations preserved information that no one had ever written down. Long before books existed, human memory became the world's first library. And every single night, around a glowing fire beneath an endless sky, another chapter was added. As the fire slowly burned lower and the conversations faded into whispers, the camp became quiet, not silent. Somewhere in the distance, insects continued their endless chorus. Leaves rustled as the wind moved through the trees. Every now and then, someone shifted closer to the warmth of the fire, adding another branch before settling back down. Sleep didn't arrive the way it often does today. There were no glowing alarm clocks counting down the hours, no buzzing phones, no traffic outside. The only clock anyone needed was the movement of the stars across the sky. Researchers studying traditional communities have found that people often drift in and out of sleep naturally during the night. Some would wake briefly, check the fire, listen to the sounds around them, and quietly fall asleep again. For ancient families, waking during the night wasn't necessarily a problem. It could have been completely normal. Those quiet moments served a purpose. A parent might comfort a restless child. Someone might notice the fire growing weak and feed it before the cold returned. Another person might simply lie awake, staring into the glowing embers, replaying the day's events, and thinking about tomorrow's journey. The darkness created something that modern life rarely allows: stillness. Without endless distractions competing for attention, the mind had room to wander. Perhaps that is where some of humanity's greatest ideas first appeared. Imagine a young hunter wondering why the moon changes shape every month, an elder noticing that certain stars always return before winter, a child asking where people go after they die. Questions like these had no written answers, only conversations, only imagination. Many archaeologists believe the earliest myths and spiritual beliefs were born from these nighttime moments, when families looked up at an enormous universe and searched for meaning. The stars became more than lights in the sky. They became stories. The moon became a calendar. Thunder became the voice of unseen forces. Whether those explanations were correct isn't the point. They helped people understand a world that often seemed mysterious and unpredictable. Night encouraged curiosity, and curiosity changed our species forever. Today, our nights look very different. Long after the sun disappears, our homes remain as bright as midday. Instead of watching flames dance across a campfire, we scroll through endless videos and glowing screens. Instead of looking up at thousands of stars, many of us can barely see a dozen through the lights of our cities. We have conquered the darkness. But in doing so, we've also separated ourselves from an experience that shaped countless generations before us. For hundreds of thousands of years, night was a time of caution, reflection, family, and wonder. It reminded our ancestors how small they were beneath the sky and how much they depended on one another to survive until morning. Maybe that's why so many people today still find comfort in sitting around a campfire. Why we enjoy telling stories late into the night. Why the sight of a sky filled with stars can leave us speechless. Those feelings aren't random. They may be echoes of a life our species lived for thousands of generations. So tonight, before you reach for the light switch or pick up your phone, step outside for just a moment. Look up. The stars above you are the same stars your ancestors followed, feared, and wondered about long before cities, electricity, or even written history existed. For a brief moment, you're sharing the same night they once did. The only difference is what you choose to see in the darkness. Let me tell in comment,